Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be doing a review of Young Lean's fourth album, STARZ. Young Lean, Swedish rapper and forward-thinking artist who's been going for nearly over a decade in the musical industry. I've always associated Young Lean with Chief Keef, funnily enough, not so much because of the aesthetic goals and sounds that they both go for, but yet it's more to do with the fact that they both started making music when they were extremely young, and at this point in time they're both considered kind of godfathers in, I suppose, what you would call internet hip-hop. I suppose in a way you could kind of say that Young Lean was even more so an influence for internet hip-hop than Chief Keef, because back in 2012 when he really started, him, Young Sherman, Good and White Armour kind of developed this mix of both hip-hop with vaporwave, which especially back then was a kind of outsider genre, and combining them was, especially back then, a pretty niche idea and concept, but hey, nowadays, you see it quite often. Also have a listen to Lean's lyrics back in the day too, which mixed that typical braggadocio I suppose most people would expect with hip-hop, but mixed it with oddball surrealism as well as internet references and references to other things that 90s kids and millennium kids would really enjoy. But throughout this period, Young Lean and his collaborators have totally tried so many different musical territories. For example, his last album, Stranger, kind of delved into ambience and R&B. The previous one to that, his sophomore album, Warlord, dabbled into sort of industrial territories. And hey, let's just not forget the side projects that Young Lean's went on and all of the different pseudonyms he's went under too. Jonathan Lean Duo 127 is his sort of foray into indie rock and singer-songwriter. His group Dodmark explore kind of gothically tinged post-punk music. All of it is something that people like Mike Patton and Frank Zappa would probably both have said, hey, this guy does a lot of varied music. So for you Lean fans out there, no doubt that when STARZ was announced, you were really anticipating what this was going to sound like. You know, I've actually been listening to Young Lean since Unknown Death 2002 came out, his first ever project, but it's especially been the last couple of years when I've been really getting into Drain Guns music that I've went back and listened to pretty much 100% of Young Lean's material that he's released. Although I've never thought that he was 100% in perfecting his sort of sound or craft, I think it's important to, you know, support people like Young Lean who aren't afraid to try and branch out in different musical territories instead of just being stuck in a musical rut and making the same album over and over again. I suppose Lean's material that he's released so far can look like an absolute masterpiece compared to some rap artists who have tried to release different sound and material. Every time I finish a Young Lean project, I very much, near on always come to the conclusion that although that the ideas are practically always 100% there, the delivery, the natural reality, the ideas landing and coming into fruition well, is sometimes it just doesn't happen. And I think that's more to do with Young Lean's delivery in terms as a vocal presence throughout all of the instrumentals that he's been on. He does this deadpan delivery quite frequently too. He does these quite struggled vocals, I suppose is a nice way of putting it too, which work occasionally on instrumentals, but other times it just makes it sound a bit naive and I suppose a bit amateurish, which I think some people would say is the appeal with Young Lean's music, but when a lot of it is really bombastic and over the top and could be otherworldly, that's the thing that holds it back from really going high up into the heavens. For the more cloud rap based tracks, the occasionally monotonous vocals can work because it has that sort of dreamy atmosphere, but when he makes tracks which are more sort of hard hitting and trap focused, it just comes off a bit dreary. I think his last project in 2018's Poison Ivy was a really good example. I mean, I love tracks like French Hotel and Silicon Wings, but then there's other tracks on that project, a bit like Happy Feet, where it's just uninteresting, it's too meandering. Oh, and I'll be honest, when Crystal Clear Ice came out back in the day, that just totally put me off listening to any Young Lean material up until I think when Hennessy and Sailor Moon eventually came out and he brought us back into enjoying his music again. But since then, really enjoying Stranger and especially enjoying Blue Plastic, the, I suppose, non-album single you'd call it, which came out in 2019. I was really looking forward to listening to STARZ and hoping that these errors would just be totally fixed and we might get the most consistent and just overall best Young Lean project. And you know what, in a way we do. I feel STARZ concept-wise is Young Lean going back and focusing on not only his past material but also looking into his life as a whole. I feel this is mostly because of the musical theme and the actual music itself. Although many of the Young Lean fans out there will listen to these 16 tracks and feel that he's not really venturing into anything new, I think at the same time though you will probably agree with us in thinking that a lot of them are more better paced and solidified and just fine-tuned and just better created than stuff that came on that was quite similar in his previous discography. Young Sherman and White Armour return as producers, and you know, I think that's kind of expected at this point for Young Lean albums, but at the end of the day, I think those people are the perfect people, as in producers, who just know exactly how to encapsulate and create moody backgrounds which suit the sort of ideas and such that Young Lean's trying to convey. And of course, STARZ in itself is a big project in STARZ, and there's a lot of different sort of stars mentioned. For example, a celebrity star that Young Lean talks about as himself. It's not so much about how he's doing in the present tense and how he's a celebrity now, but how he's gotten more popular and gained more respect as he's went on for his musical endeavours. There's a line on the track Low where Young Lean says, "I'm only 23, but there's like 10 of me." And I especially agree with a genius annotation that someone's made where they say that that line kind of suggests that Young Lean's done so much in such a short amount of time. Not only is the celebrity star, but Young Lean mentions shooting stars as well, especially on the track Ice Heart. He mentions not just his past decisions and regrets, but can also be seen as focusing on the future and the present, where he wants to kind of go off into a magical, otherworldly area, especially through the occasional hints to using drugs. In my review of the mixtape Exeter by Blade, I mentioned that there was a lot of allusions to escapism, specifically a sort of medieval fantasy concept. I saw it in the album cover where he had a thing that looked like the Sock and Buskin and a thing that kind of looked like the Court Jester, and I'm actually still seeing similarities with this project too. I mean, look at how the lads are dressed in the Boy Life in EU music video. Specifically, Young Lean kind of looks like the Shakespearean fool, and I kind of see a lot of similarities with Ingmar Bergman's Seven Seal, or even kind of, I suppose it might be reaching Fellini's La Strada. Anyways, enough of the nerdy speculations, let's just get on to the album itself. The album kicks off with the very noisy and abrasive My Agenda, which has these blasts of feedback and sub-basses, which has very urban sound, and I can kind of feel that it would be the soundtrack to a moody A24 film, a la soundtracked by One-Tricks Point Never or something. As the complete rest of the album is far more mellower than this track, to me this kind of represents coming out of a bad dream or a comatose or even a bad trip. This is the one time on the project where Young Lean does his sort of shouty vocals, which I suppose is found on Du Vet of his post-punk group, or especially on his Warlord album tracks. I think the instrumental's good. It could have been expanded a bit longer. It's quite short in 2 minutes, but I feel that it's Young Lean here which doesn't help sell the concept, and this is kind of what I'm going to be referring to throughout the review because it's the main gripe I have with this project. It's frustrating because I understand why Young Lean's doing these low sort of guttural vocals and why there's sporadic sound effects to when he's doing these sporadic deliveries, but there's just something about the delivery which doesn't work for me. It is trying really hard to sound ominous and kind of spooky, but it just doesn't work for us. I think it's more to do with the fact that it's so short and it's just kind of all over the place. It should have been expanded a bit longer, so it could have had more time to sort of envelop the listener with more atmosphere and build up tension, instead of kind of going from 0 to 100 in the space of literally 2 minutes. You know, however, the next track, Yayo, I think is a far better track because it mixes that sort of lackadaisical vocal delivery with a clear melody and structure. The main theme of Yayo is Young Lean displaying his feelings and emotions to the listening audience about how he feels his musical career has went. Yeah, there's a feeling of anxiousness that's going on throughout the song, but at the same time there's a sense of pride, I feel, too. Not because of his success, which he obviously has, but at the same time he uses a line such as "at the end of the rainbow." Now, I'm aware that there's a leak or an alternative version of Playboi Carti being on this track, and you know, you can look it up on the internet and you can listen to it and you can form your own opinion about which version you prefer, but to me, it's this version that's on the project, which I prefer any day of the week. I mean, Carti's lyrics added absolutely nothing to the track topically, and look, I feel like I'm sometimes in a bit of a minority where I've been enjoying the baby voice Carti that he's been doing on certain singles, features, and the leaks that have been coming out, but on here, it's just gobbledygook. Whiny, scatterbrained gobbledygook. You know, I hope Young Lean, if he had to pay for that verse, he got a fucking full refund, because that was a load of shit. So the only feature actually on this album is Ariel Pink, of all people, and I was really looking forward to this track because, you know, I thought that Ariel Pink, he has a very sort of hazy and sometimes psychedelic and whimsical atmosphere on most of his discography, which would suit Young Lean quite well. But with him being a singer-songwriter, I thought that if he added extra instrumentations, it could kind of make the song he's on, which is STARZ, the title track, by the way, maybe develop it and make it a bit more just different in terms of sounds. But with a little guitar added here and there, and this little bit of fast-paced percussion, which I don't know if that's what he's doing, but doesn't really suit the flow of the track. It's a bit disappointing, to be honest. The whole track is a bit too sparse and just uneventful for me, and with it being easily the longest track too, it sticks out a bit. I mean, I understand lyrically the concept's about wishing for simpler times, and that's why it's got a very sort of dreamy atmosphere, but the whole overall thing is just a bit too minimal and just skeletal overall, which just, for me, especially with its length, it just outstays its welcome. The only other track that I have a major gripe with is the track Dance in the Dark. And with this track, it's a bit like My Agenda, the first track, in missing its potential, but oh my god, even more so with this song. The chorus, which fills up the majority of this track because it's sung twice, it's just terrible. The vocals are shoddy as hell by Young Lean. And for some reason I added these sort of echoing vocals, which are slightly pitched up, and they're just dodgy. They just don't feel right. They don't work for me whatsoever, but that contrasts with the verse. And it's like the best vocals I've heard from Young Lean, period. In fact, if the whole song was as sung as well as he did in that verse, not only is that going to be the best sung Young Lean track I think he's ever made, but that's a contender for probably the best Young Lean track he's ever made, period. At least it would have been one of my favourites that he's ever made. It's such a shame, and this happens a few times with other tracks on STARZ where his vocals are just problematic and they just don't make songs that could be really, really good as enjoyable as they could be. Give tracks like Low a listen, or the last track, Put Me in a Spell. I mean, White Armour made this beautiful instrumental. I love the gorgeous synths. It literally sounds like you're looking up in space and you're seeing shooting stars, and the haunting, beautiful piano that he's got throughout this track. But Young Lean's vocals on most of this song is just shaky as hell. And I don't understand, because I know Young Lean can sing much better than this. He shows it on the album itself, I think it's just the performances and the takes of these tracks which just could have been improved much better. You only need to look at other tracks of the album. I mean, I already mentioned the verse of Dance in the Dark, but give Boy Life and EU a listen. He's much better on there. Out of My Head as well, he sings pretty well on there. So what's with the shoddy performances? I know it's probably just me maybe, and there might be people who appreciate his sort of warbly vocals because they might see that as a way of him conveying vulnerability, or it's a relatability factor, so he's not a real professional singer. But I understand that, but at the same time, it's just one of those things where, I'm sorry, it just ruins it a bit for me, some of these tracks. I mean, mentioning Boy Life in EU, that's a great track, and not only does it have really good vocals by Young Lean, but it actually uses the idea that My Agenda uses by going from slower to sort of louder in that contrast, but it has time to develop it, and because of that, it's a much better track. And you know, sometimes the warbly vocals that Lean has actually works to his benefit. I think it's more to do with his slower ballady tracks where he's having to hold a consistent note. That's his kind of Achilles heel, if you will. But when he's doing it with rapping, or he's doing more fast-tempoed singing, it actually conveys a kind of interesting effect and is actually enjoyably unique. The quirky melodies, for example, on Hellraiser, I really enjoy, with the sort of question and callback refrains, and I really like Dog Boy as well, which I could so see Blade being on that track. I mean, what a fantastic instrumental this is. It's not just because of the hi-hats and snares, which are kind of fun and quirky, and Lean flows over really well, but the synthesizer is just gorgeous. It's so quaint and soothing and calm. It's like the soundtrack to a kid's interpretation of a little space adventure. Quite similar in sounding, but nearly as enjoyable as Butterfly Paralyzed. And I think for you future fans who are watching this, you might really get something out of this song, especially if you like his album Hendrix, because it's got that similar sound of moody atmosphere, but at the same time, Young Lean does this ad-lib, which is like used with auto-tune and reminds me of songs like Use Me off that Hendrix album. And with tracks which I suppose most people consider more conventional in rapping, songs like Pikachu and Ice Heart and Violence, I think Lean's really at his best here too. These are great trap songs with a big concentration with melody and flow, and they're just great tracks. But for a contender for me, for one of my favourite tracks, which are kind of similar to this, is the song Acid at 7-Eleven, which for me, especially the main hook, is contended for the best earworm on this album. I mean, there's loads of highlights on this. I mean, for me, songs like Acid at 7-Eleven, Out of My Head, Dog Boy, Boy Life in EU, you know, these are tracks which I feel have become some of my favourite Young Lean songs. But it's just the vocal blemishes which I just feel that ruin some tracks. And, you know, there's nothing on this album, don't get us wrong, that's entirely unlistenable, but maybe it's just me, but I find it especially frustrating. Never mind a song being terrible, but a song being pretty mediocre, but has the potential to be really good if that little problem was just fixed. Looking back, I think I probably still enjoy this as much as I do with Stranger. I do still think that STARZ has probably overall a lot more highlights, but at the same time, I think Stranger's strong tracks are even stronger, and I personally I think it's a bit more varied instrumental-wise than compared to STARZ too. One day, be it an EP or a short mixtape, Young Lean is going to create something which I will enjoy from head to toe. I will enjoy thoroughly all the way through, you know, but he just needs to harness the potential, which I know and he's shown plenty of times, and just look back and go over certain things and just fix little things here and there. Once he harnesses all of his capabilities and does this, he really will wow me and probably a lot of people. He'll create the classic, which I know is really in him. I mean, he already is a pioneer, don't get us wrong. He is a legend in my eyes. But one day, I'm sure, but not quite this time, he's going to create a proper, universally considered classic. He really is a leading figure about how hip-hop sounds today, and he deserves a landmark album which universally by critics and just everyone in general will consider an absolute classic. But still, with the project that we've got here, STARZ, I still did really enjoy it, but yeah, it had a few flaws, but I've taken a lot of tracks that I do really enjoy. There's a few issues here and there, some tracks I won't be going back to, but many I still will. Overall, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. It's still a really enjoyable album, and for you who are a fan of Young Lean, I hope you enjoy it as much as you can, and let us know if you enjoy it as much as me, enjoy it less, enjoy it more. I'd like to know. So thanks again for watching, take care of yourselves, bye for now.
Thanks for listening.